I hear it over and over again. I have my will. My estate planning is done. No, it is not. That's just the beginning. There's a second step process that most people don't know about. And so I'm trying to constantly educate people on, if you really want to stay out of probate, or your family to stay out of probate, we've got to do that second step.
Welcome to In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard.
Lisa Sims is an attorney and the founder of the law offices of Lisa M. Sims, where she helps families navigate estate planning and probate with clarity and confidence. After starting in the legal field at just 18 and eventually opening her own firm, Lisa found her calling in helping families protect what matters most. She's passionate about simplifying the legal process, minimizing stress, and making sure every client's wishes are honored with dignity and respect. Lisa, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So what do most people get wrong about probate?
Right now, I'm kind of on a kick. And if you follow my law firm's Facebook page, I think I've made 2 posts so far, but I'm just, as I hear things throughout the week on that same topic, because I hear it over and over again, is I have my will. My estate planning is done.
Oh.
No, it is not. That's just the beginning. There's a second step process that most people don't know about. And so I'm trying to constantly educate people on, if you really want to stay out of probate, or your family to stay out of probate, we've got to do that second step.
So some people don't even know exactly what probate is and why you would want to stay out of probate. Can you help explain that a little bit?
So probate is really there to protect other people's money. And when someone passes, they're not here to protect it themselves. And that's what a will does, is tells the probate court judge, here's what I want to happen if I end up in probate after passing. The will does some great things, names a personal representative. But most people, when they come into my office, their primary goal is to avoid probate and have things pass as simply as possible to whoever they want it to pass to.
Right.
A lot of times, of course, their spouse, that's usually the first one. Their kids. Not everybody has joint kids, so it can get very complicated very quickly. And once we open that door to probate, lots of bad things can happen. Creditors can come in, family members can fight, and I've just seen some very, very ugly situations that could have been avoided really pretty simply.
Can you tell us an example of one of your, I guess, more difficult situations that you've run into?
Usually the most difficult ones, well, first of all, most probates that I have done always involve real estate. That is probably the easiest, simplest thing to avoid probate if you go see a lawyer. It's probably going to be the cheapest thing. I tell people all the time, if you do nothing else, you have got to keep your land out of probate. Because that is usually people are who makes the mortgage payment, who makes the city utilities payment. It's all those complicated things that happen. When it gets really complicated, I've got one going on right now where we can end up in 2 probates if you don't do it correctly.
Really?
And so where it usually ends up in 2 probates, there's really 2 things. At death, it is when people are transferring or naming beneficiaries who are special needs beneficiaries. They're on public benefits, and now they're going to get kicked off because they tried to do the right thing and the best thing and put them on life insurance policies, bank accounts, whatever they did. Well, now their assets are over the amount that they're allowed to have in order to stay on their benefits. And to a beneficiary, that is a very big deal. So I have one now where it is, the beneficiary isn't that old, but the beneficiary does have a guardianship. Didn't have a conservatorship, which has to do with the money, because she doesn't have any money until now. So not only do we have to do a probate for the decedent, for the land that she did not go to a lawyer on to keep that out of probate. So I have to do the decedent estate, and then I have to turn around and file a conservatorship, or there's a couple different ways to do it. It can be very expensive. I try to be creative within the bounds of the law. If we can stay out of probate, that's great. I can do that sometimes. I have a couple cases going on right now. 6 owners of land, and we're trying to keep that out of probate. That's how that one ended up. So it can get very complicated very fast. But the worst ones are when they didn't get their estate planning done during their lifetime, and they end up in, hospice, hospital, rehab. Something happens and they become incapacitated. And now a doctor has said that they can't safely make their own decisions. And so now the family, even if it's a spouse, has to go in and file a guardianship over their own spouse. Then when they pass, if they didn't have their estate planning done on the decedent side, we have to do a probate for the spouse, for the decedent side when they pass. And then maybe if they've thrown in there, there is some beneficiary assignments, but they're special needs. So it can get multiple probates very fast. And in my experience, although estate planning can be very expensive, people sometimes get sticker shock on that. But almost every probate that I have done has been at least 3 times the amount, what it would have cost had you just gone and seen a lawyer. So I tell people all the time, you might pay an hour consult, and maybe that's all you need. But getting everything done is going to be much cheaper, quicker for your beneficiaries, because that's who everybody's trying to protect. Why they usually come in and say their goal is to stay out of probate, because they want to protect their family. And people don't know what they don't know. And that's why I have more probate cases right now than I have estate planning cases right now. It's a constant education of, you've just got to get this done, because it's always going to be an ugly story to tell.
Yeah.
So everybody that has to go through probate, oftentimes that's their first time ever needing a lawyer. I've done it a lot, so it's much easier for me. And so I just try to guide them through with, as much compassion and patience. One client told me, she said, "You have the patience of a saint." I said, well, I do try to, it's just, I don't like going through it. So I certainly understand and can empathize that you don't want to be doing this either. Yeah. So I just try to make it as easy as possible and do what I can with what I have.
Well, I've heard different, and I don't have the definition on any of these, but I've heard executor, I've heard administrator, I've heard conservatorship. So can you help us understand what some of these are based on, like, what people have in place?
So some words are the same. So if you hear executor or personal representative, that's the same thing. It just usually depends on preference of naming it. But Missouri does use the word personal representative. But sometimes I do get wills and things that have different terminology, but sometimes those are the same hat that people are wearing.
When they have a trust that's completed, and they're having to pick someone to be in that trust who's going to be in charge of, that's the executor of the trust, or is that a different term?
Trust term would be a trustee.
Trustee. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they have to select that person who's going to, or in the will, they say who's going to be my personal representative, but who's going to actually be in charge of the day-to-day things like paying the bills and different things like that as they're going through the process of getting, because I'm assuming with a trust it's easier, but there's still pieces that have to be taken care of even with a trust. So, but let me go back to the decision of making who's going to be the person that they're selecting. In your experience, is that 9 times out of 10 a child of the person?
In my, well, when they create it, they're typically going to be the trustee during their lifetime. So they create it, they put their own assets in it, and they're going to manage it as trustee during their lifetime.
Okay.
It's when they become incapacitated or they die. That's when their successor trustee will step in.
Okay.
If they're married, usually it's 2 trustees. It'll be, and then we'll wait until the second spouse passes. And then usually in my experience, it is a family member.
Okay.
It could be one of the children. Sometimes people put multiple on there. If they have 3 kids, sometimes they put all 3. It just depends on what their wishes are and who they trust to actually do what they put in the trust to do. And then sometimes clients come in and they don't want their kids to have to deal with that or potentially fight. And so they will choose a corporate trustee, such as one of the bank trust companies.
Okay. And are there good ones locally here in Springfield?
There's 2 that I work with most frequently. And they're just really good to work with.
Yeah.
They're very responsive to me when I email or when I call or sometimes text because I do handle trust administration as well.
Okay. And who do you recommend?
I usually use Simmons Trust and Central Trust.
Okay.
Is who I work with.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good.
What are some of the biggest mistakes families make when they try to handle estate planning on their own without going through the proper process?
What I see on my end is it's usually just not thorough. And I've also been accused of being very thorough because there's a way to keep it out of probate. It's not just the will. It's not just the trust. There's multiple documents that you might need. The easiest way to kind of explain it is most people know what a beneficiary is on a life insurance or on a bank account or on a car. Those are usually the 3 common ones that they know to do that. So then they might end up in a partial probate because they didn't take care of their other assets. What about the contents of the home? What about, do they own a business? Do they have land? Multiple land sometimes. Sometimes they have multiple LLCs. There's just, every single thing has a way to do it to try to keep it out of probate.
And so sometimes they'll come in with a trust that doesn't have all the documents that you recommend.
Well, usually they'll come in with a trust, and when I ask, well, what does your trust own? Nothing. Well, that's not a good answer. So then I sometimes they have a great trust. They have, but they didn't put anything in it. They might have put their personal property in it. Or, if they had a lawyer do it, they're certainly going to have the house and the contents. I mean, they'll take care of that. But, there's extra steps. Who do you put, you need to have another document for each company. You need to have every single thing. I've taken the craziest things through probate. I've had someone come in where, grandparent had purchased life insurance for the grandchildren. Well, there wasn't anybody when she passed. She was the only owner. So I've had to take grandparent or, life insurance policies of kids through probate. I mean, you've got to be thorough and take care of everything, because if you forget one thing, you just don't have the authority to deal with it. And that's when people will get banks or letters from banks or financial institutions, or any other third party that says, I can't communicate with you until you show me a court order.
Yeah.
And then that's when they come into me going, I got this and I don't know what to do. And then we just start from square one and figure out what we need to do. And then we go do that.
Yeah. It seems like I've heard this a couple of times where there was an individual who passed away and everything was frozen. Their bank account was frozen, their, all their investments, everything. But bills were still coming in. And the family really didn't know what to do. And I'm assuming that they could make a lot of mistakes early on that might actually complicate or make things harder for you. What could you kind of get into what some of those things they need to do or avoid? Because I think there's probably a lot of people out there who might be listening. They're like, yeah, it'd be nice if we got a trust set up, but I don't know that I can talk mom or dad into doing it. And, they may wind up in this situation more than not.
Yep. And not everybody needs a trust. Not everybody needs a will. It depends on, how you do it. I usually start with, I'm a very broad estate planner. I don't only deal with trusts. I don't only deal with one kind of thing. I take what my client comes in and I base it on what they have. So I usually the way I explain it is you might need a trust, you might need a will, you might need something completely different. And we're just going to figure out what that is. Of course, the something else is going to be a little bit cheaper and the trust is going to be more like the Cadillac version of getting your estate planning done. But if you do it correctly and thoroughly, then your successor trustee can come into somebody like me who helps administer the trusts. So, really the first thing that I would recommend as soon as they have that death certificate, go see a lawyer. Because if you start doing things incorrectly, I've seen people come in, later, they've paid debt that they didn't need to pay, they've paid bills they didn't need to pay, and now they have no money for the bills they do need to pay. And then I have to have the ugly conversation of, well, how many kids do we have? We've got, 4 kids. Well, the legal fee is going to be, let's throw out numbers, $4,000. Hopefully you can each come up with $1,000 so we can get the process started. And that's just it's not a comfortable conversation to have, but it needs to be had.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that the decedent, that was not their intent.
Right.
To do that. And it's just that from my perspective, I just feel they didn't know what they didn't know. They thought they were doing the right thing. Right. But it's just, that's not how legally the law plays out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you walk us through what a consultation is like for our listeners who have never gone through this before?
Sure. So when somebody calls my office, now these are just my office procedures. Every law firm is going to have their own procedures, what they do. When somebody contacts me, I kind of do a brief intake over the phone just to see if that is something that I can help them with. Sometimes I refer them on because they just need a different type of lawyer. They just don't know that. And so I'll send them somewhere else to do that. But if it is something that I can take, so if it's estate planning, then I will send them a confidential worksheet. It's about 3 pages. There are a list of documents that I really need to see because what I don't want to happen is to get into that meeting and it's I think it's that way. Well, I think it's titled that way. They gotta see the documents or I cannot give you specific advice. Yeah. So people are usually pretty good and they'll bring in whatever they have, or maybe they have it on their phone and we can, pull it up and look at it. But the consultation it's usually a good hour. I try to be very thorough. And if they come in with a completed worksheet, we can have a really effective meeting. And by the end of that meeting, I can give them some options. It's not just one option. I can give you the trust option. I can give you the will option. I can give you something totally different. And it's up to that client to decide, they know their family. They know their stuff. They know the way they live their life. And they can choose, which route that they want to go. I try to get everything turned around pretty quickly. I try to do everything in about 30 days. So once they make their deposit, they decide which route they want to go. They make their deposit. I get started working on their documents and set their signing appointment. So we know exactly what date we're working towards. They know exactly what date they're going to be getting their documents. They're going to know how they're getting their documents. I like to have clients look at their drafts. because I'm not perfect. They might see some errors or have questions, or it prompts them for information that maybe we didn't cover during the meeting, but they thought about it later once they get their drafts, and I might need to make some changes. I just had one recently where I wrote it down wrong, or I didn't write it down wrong. I wrote it down. They changed their mind a little bit once they got their drafts, once they visually saw them, and we had to make some changes. So but we kept their signing date. They didn't have to push that back. We just worked together as a collaborative team with my client to get their goal accomplished. And so their intent is protected.
Have you run into a situation where you had multiple kids without a will, and there was a bit of mediation that had to happen there amongst the kids?
I do know a good mediator. He's a former judge, it's Jason Brown. I have not had a situation yet where I have been in that either a decedent administration or a trust administration that could maybe go sideways and they fight. But yes, there is a mechanism where they can try to avoid fighting it out. I've had some very, very ugly family members will fight over $10,000.
Oh, I bet.
And it all of a sudden your lawyer fees are $20,000, and you don't know how that happened. It's like, you're paying me more than you're going to get individually. Maybe as a whole, it might be. I think it was $70,000 that they were fighting over, and it was just, it could have been avoided. Yeah. By one document. Emotions
trump logic oftentimes in these situations, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. Emotions are very much so. And it's also important to people, as they age, as people want to age at home. They want to stay at home. And if there's any way to keep them at home, that's what they want to happen. And so we just need to have good documents and with the proper authorities in there. Sometimes what they can't do, don't do this and do it a certain way. But it's just very important to have that nailed down thoroughly. I love the unique situations. I love the creativity. So I like to be creative. And if there's a way, I had one situation where it was, they had back-to-back agents on their power of attorney. And thank goodness that lawyer put that default paragraph in there, because I was able to just create another document, work with the agent who was supposed to be the agent, and they were able to nominate the next agent, even though that person wasn't named in that document.
Interesting.
Specifically.
Yeah.
So I like to try to find creative ways, because I know my clients want to avoid probate, and sometimes we can. Yeah. And it's because they had documents that were good to address that concern later.
That's really good. What's the craziest asset you ever had to take through probate?
Those life insurance ones those take the cake, because I would not have thought about getting that deep in the weeds necessarily of, do you own life insurance policies on grandchildren? That wasn't a conversation we had.
Right.
That I usually have. I do now. So every time I take something through probate, it prompts my next clients down the road to ask those questions during the conversations.
And those insurance policies are like annuities, like they have cash values to them?
No, they were just $5,000 policies on each grandkid.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So that and vehicles, abandoned vehicles on property. They have lost titles. They can't find the titles, so they didn't get. I had one client call it a Todd. I have Todds on all my titles. So that's awesome. So we call it TOD, but I like Todd. And so, but if you don't get those things done, I think there were 3 cars on that piece of property. Even though they were junk, they didn't have authority. And my understanding is salvage companies used to take things like that because they're junk. Yeah. But I had heard in the last few years, clients coming in saying, the salvage company won't take the car. They won't come get the car. What do I need to do? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, sometimes the decedent, during their lifetime, they just kick that can down the road, and then their beneficiaries have to deal with it. But before I go on, another one that's interesting, because I'm waiting to find something really good on this treasure trove, is safe deposit boxes. If you pass with a safe deposit box and nobody has the authority to go in there, there is legally in Missouri, you have to go to probate. You have to get a court order. You have to get a court order for the bank to drill the box. And I had yet to come up with a safe deposit box with anything valuable in it.
Oh no. Oh no.
And one time it was because their estate planning documents were in the safe deposit box. So nobody had access to them. So that ends up where we have to, go do that process. Then we have to file the actual decedent probate potentially.
It's those little things that get you.
It's just all those little things that you just don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that people want to do the right thing for their beneficiaries. They just didn't know. So unfortunately, we have to take some of those things through probate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of that, it can be very, very easily avoided. Very easily avoided, just by getting it done, initially, instead of, can't tell you how many times I say kick the can down the road, because that's what people do and then, I had one where I think it was like a 10 acre plot of land, North County, I don't know, Hickory County or Cedar County, wherever it was. They didn't live in, one lived, they each lived on the West Coast. One was in California, one was in Washington. None of the family lived in Missouri anymore. They didn't do the original probate back when the original owners on the deed died. But from West Coast standards, our taxes are pretty cheap. And so when they called, it was their first question was, are we sure the taxes are paid? Because we pay this bill every year. And are your taxes really that inexpensive? Wow. And when they told me the county, and they said there was no structures on it. And I said, yeah, you paid the tax bill if you got a paid tax receipt. They paid those taxes for over a decade. And by the time it trickled down, so many people had died that had an interest in it. They just gave it up on a tax lien. They just stopped paying the taxes, and they just let it go, because it's just a big family tree that you just got to create when people die, because some might die with 7 kids, some might die with 2 kids, and then it just goes on and on and on. And in that situation, they didn't think it was financially viable for them to track down that many people, have multiple probates to get access to theirs. There might have been another way to do it, but it's just tracking down those people to even get a signature on a document to keep it out of probate. It was a very long time that nobody had contacted a Missouri probate lawyer. They just kept paying the taxes.
We lived on land that we had purchased and didn't know this, because I had a field camera out, and there was a gentleman I saw on the field camera. I was like, what? And so I asked a neighbor about it, and it's like, he knew who he was. And he's like, if you go over behind this bush that we'd never really searched on the land, he'd buried his wife. She had a plot there.
Oh, wow.
We didn't have any idea about it, and wasn't in any paperwork or anything like that. And he came on, and, well, what are you going to do? Not say, don't come on my land? But it was there. And it was just one of those things that could get messy later, I guess. I don't really know.
Give him permission to be there. Very interesting.
Yes.
We run across things like that. We'll come in with the question, what do I do with this? And those are sometimes unique situations that I might hear that one time in my whole career, and I'll never hear it again. Wow. So I frequently get situations where I might never run across that again. Yeah. And hopefully I'm educating people enough that they won't end up in that situation either, like someone else.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
That
Very
is-
interesting.
For someone who thinks I'm not wealthy enough to need an estate plan, how would you change their mind?
I would argue that those are the people who need it the most. Unless their family can pay a probate lawyer down the road, 3 times what it would have cost them to do it. So usually when people like that call and come in, and because I do charge for my consultations, I charge my hourly rate of $300 to go over that consultation, and sometimes they don't have that. I will refer them to legal services for an application. I said, let them tell you no. But what they can do is provide a lawyer. Lawyers like me, there's lots of lawyers who sign up who will take a very drastically reduced rate so those people can get their things taken care of. Usually people who say they have nothing, in my experience, they usually have a house, a car, and a bank account. That's enough to need an estate planning lawyer. And so it might, you might not have, you won't need a $5,000 trust, but, you might need to spend $500 or $1,000 to do that. But if you let a piece of land go through probate, it's 6 months to a year before we can get out of probate, and even to sell it. So, realtors are, they probably run into it all the time, and it's about authority, who has the authority to sell it. And so
Right.
if they only have a house, a bank account, and a car, they usually know how to take care of the bank account and the car. It's the house and the contents. And for me, I can, those are things I can do relatively, inexpensively. It might be, less than $1,000 to keep that out of probate. So
Besides the potential increased cost of having to take something through probate, are there other risks to assets that could potentially happen when you're, delayed in making payments on things, or who knows what?
there's one now that I'm working on, one that I'm trying to keep out of probate, but there's multiple owners of the house. What ends up happening is they'll get in the mail, or they'll be in the decedent's email or somewhere where they will see a notice from a creditor. So I got one. The family forwarded to me an email from a creditor out of state. And, they're very concerned because, as beneficiaries or heirs, it wasn't their debt. And so they want the benefit of their inheritance, not having to pay a creditor potentially. But those creditors have a job to do too. I mean, they need to collect their money too. And so when we got this notice that they forwarded me, there's no information on it. I don't know what the debt is for. I don't know how much the debt is for. I don't know if it's fraud. I don't know if it's a scam. I don't know what it is. But if we can avoid probate, that's the best thing to do, because if we open the door to probate, now that creditor has a case number in probate that they can come in, and then we will learn how much money that they think that they're owed. It's just something you don't want to fight over. The ones I've seen is mortgage companies and the hospital are ones that I've seen come through. That they want their money.
Could you give us a verbal checklist on how to avoid probate? Just kind of like going through the steps for people that kind of summarizing everything that you've said so far.
Like I said, there's some things that people know what to do. The common things are putting a beneficiary. They know to put a beneficiary on a life insurance policy. They know to put their beneficiary on a car. They know to put their beneficiary on a bank account. But sometimes they miss all the other things. And usually they'll just skip it if they don't know how to do it. So that's fine to, at least get a beneficiary on there to keep it out of probate. But I would still recommend going and seeing a lawyer to be very thorough and address everything, the personal property in your home, usually financial accounts, IRAs, and things like that they do. But reasons why I say to go in and have that conversation is because you don't want to put a special needs beneficiary on there. it's going to kick them off their benefits. I've seen people who will put a minor child as a beneficiary on there. You can't do that either. There's a different way you have to do that.
What happens with that life insurance policy when somebody's has a disability? They're not on record, I guess. Is that the right way to put it? I'm not sure.
So there are, and what we're talking about is Medicaid. People are on Medicaid, they're on SNAP benefits, they're just on whatever state benefits or government benefits are out there. But that's how they live their life every day. They rely on those things. And so if somebody is on, $100,000 life insurance policy, they've given it to a special needs beneficiary, they have to usually report annually or every 9 months what their assets are, what their income is. And so if they have to now report that, they're going to get kicked off their benefits. They're going to have to spend all the way down that $100,000 to $5,000 or whatever amount that they're allowed to keep, according to the government. And then they'll have to reapply for government benefits. So
I'm sorry, I'm going to get in the weeds here just a little bit. I just want to make sure I understand. So you could have an older adult and they have an older child that's living in the home with them. The home may or may not be paid off. And so that situation, that they may not have someone that, is going to jump in and take care of that individual. Have you been a part of any of those situations where you see what happens? How does that play out?
So it depends on if, so you've got the decedent and their stuff. And then if you have, it's usually a special needs beneficiary. Sometimes, but rarely, will that beneficiary have done their own estate planning. And what I'm looking at is for a power of attorney. That can usually keep us out of probate and keep it private. But a lot of times they do not have a power of attorney. And so oftentimes I have a couple going on right now where I'm trying to preserve the benefits by way of court order so we can get it into a special needs trust. And so it's not their money. They will never, ever, ever get access to it. They can never demand that money. It is entirely up to that trustee following the rules of that trust, and guidance from a lawyer. I would highly encourage anybody who's administering a special needs trust to have a lawyer help them administer that privately. Because if I had one come in one time where just by the title of the trust, which is all the state can see, because they don't have a copy of that trust. They just, all they can see is the name. And they had contacted the out-of-state trustee demanding assets for the state. And so they contacted me. They said, no, this is my money that I put in to this named trust. And I said, well, I wish we would have named it better because the way the state read it looked like it was that beneficiary's money right then. When what was true is they could never demand that money.
The way it was set up.
It was still the parent's money. It was not the the parent hadn't died yet. So it wouldn't be there. The way they set it up, it would never even be an argument that it's the child's money because it's still the parent's money.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a tough one. So same situation.
I love tough ones.
Same situation, sizable life insurance policy. Okay. You've got and maybe in the situation that they were in, they were on Medicaid, still in the same home that may not be paid off. And that person's coming to you ahead of time and saying, okay, how do I set things up ideally so that, my special needs child can stay in our home so it's not so traumatic because they're having to go somewhere else and they're still going to get care here. Is that possible? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. So there's, so the parent can do their own estate planning. And the way I phrase it is just think of it as being a trust within a trust. And the trust within the trust is specifically for the beneficiary and how So rather than being just a standalone special needs trust, it's within the parent's trust for their successor trustee to manage it for the beneficiary. And so I've had, sometimes clients will be very specific. I wish they would be more specific because, they can rely on me to come up with the language, but I love it when clients come in. I've had 2 really complicated ones where, it's just putting all the pieces together, but they can still, just so they can live the best life that they can. So there were carve outs still for, what if they're disabled, but they can still get married?
Yeah.
What if they can still have children? What does that look like? Can they, do anything with that? And so when you're talking about a special needs trust, it's very, very specific if we're trying to preserve their benefits while maintaining the assets of their inheritance. But that's the beauty of a trust is they can direct from the grave on what's going to happen. And that's the beauty of trusts is that's administered privately and according to your document. That's pretty much how it's going to play out as long as you have funded your trust correctly. And we don't have to go to probate to get the assets back into the trust because they didn't do it before they passed.
Right.
So that's why when you're just, and most people with those higher, my clients with the higher net level, they do get very complicated. They want 2 trusts. They want to put certain assets in one trust and have somebody else manage this one. And, it can get very, very complicated. But as long as we've set it up correctly, we've funded it correctly, then that is how it should play out.
Yeah.
Privately.
That's great.
To preserve that for the beneficiary, just like they had intended.
Yeah, that's really good.
Are there any other misconceptions about estate planning that you'd love to clear up? Anything that comes to mind?
Right now, I'm just on that kick with a will.
The will.
People who come in and say, I got my estate planning done. I've got my will. I'm like, do you have anything else? Nope. It's all I need. No, it is not. And then we need to have a conversation. And my first consultation meetings are very thorough, as long as they come in, with their documents and that confidential sheet, and we can have a good starting place, very precise to, what their assets are and their beneficiaries, because there's blended families, there's special needs beneficiaries, there's children who are beneficiaries. There are people who don't like their child's spouse. They're afraid that they're going to get the money. Right. There's all kinds of concerns, why they want to preserve that. And we can protect all of it.
Yeah.
I had one lady where she owned land. Kids didn't live here. They lived out of state. This was a fun one. And she had converted her properties to weekly rentals because she didn't want to have to deal with the monthly or yearly, rentals. So she had set it up with a different lawyer, on her land. But according to the number of units, we had to give them permission of, basically her goal was she didn't want to have her children homeless. They may never come to live here. They may decide to sell it. But I don't ever want my kids to be homeless. I always want them to have a place to live. And then we get into layers and it gets deep in the weeds where, but when they come to visit now, this one really likes that unit. So I want to make sure that they can have that choice of unit first. But if they decide they don't want that unit, they get to pick any of these other units. So it can get whatever the guidelines are. And that usually I don't do multiple drafts of trusts, but that one I think we went through about 6 drafts before I got it right in line. Because, clients, her, she was changing her mind. And once she saw it in writing, it was, well, let's kind of tweak it a little bit here. But I like working with clients like that. Those are the clients that are truly, they know what they want. They know exactly what they want in it. And they just need a lawyer to guide them.
That's great.
So it plays out that way.
Yeah. That's really good.
Do you have any wow stories? Like, I'm so glad you told me this information and everything worked out really well. Happy endings.
Well, those are usually my best clients who have gone through something totally horrible. And now they can appreciate, I do not want my family or my spouse or my kids to ever have to go through this. And wow, can you believe I would have never thought that this would have ever played out that way. So those are clients where I get the opportunity to educate them. And then, yes, they usually come back in for their own estate planning to get that done. Because what's also important is avoiding probate during your lifetime. I would probably 10 times out of 10 clients will come in because they're thinking that they need to avoid probate at death. And that's all they're thinking about. And so the worst cases are when, you have an 80-year-old wife whose 84-year-old husband fell at home and now is in rehab or at the hospital having surgeries, and she never dealt with the bills and she doesn't know what to pay. And now she doesn't have the authority because the house is in his name or the mortgage is in his name and he's stuck at the hospital and can't. So it's, we don't have joint titled stuff all the time anymore. And you only have the authority that you have. And if it's in your spouse's name, the bank isn't going to give you that money.
Right.
They have duties too. So I call them enhanced powers of attorneys. You need one for healthcare and you need one for finances. And it's based on the financial one is because what people don't realize is if a spouse has to take another spouse through probate because now they're have dementia or Alzheimer's and their doctor has now declared them, they need either the doctors will say it's time to activate the power of attorney, but if they don't have one, they're going to recommend, that we're going to have to take that through probate. And so it's a spouse taking their spouse through probate so they can get the authority to make their medical decisions and take care of their bills. And it happens more often than it should. I feel because people don't know that's the situation. So those are really sad ones to take because we're not even usually arguing with anybody.
Sure.
I mean, as a litigator, I'm not in there butting heads with anybody.
Yeah.
It's getting through the probate court procedure to get the court order from the judge so the client can have the authority to do what they need to do, whether it's the doctor or the bank or the mortgage company or, whatever is unique to their situation. I've had people call saying, hey, we're in the middle of a bankruptcy. My spouse just got declared, incapacitated. What do I do? So there's, people go live their lives and, and until something happens, then they come in and they need that guidance to just get them through the process to the end where they need to be.
So, do you have, advice for folks that, they may be at different stages in their life? Like at what stage is a couple saying, we need to do this? At what point do they need a trust?
A trust specifically?
Well,
or just any estate planning?
Maybe any estate planning.
So any estate planning, I mean, once you're 18, usually 18-year-olds have a car and a bank account. And so, unless there's a authority to do that. Right. Of course, they're going to need the power of attorney because they're not going to be incapacitated to do that through probate. I always like to use the story, and I might be getting into the weeds here, but when I get on powers of attorney, I get really passionate about those because I have had my agent need to use mine when I've been out of the country. And it would have just been awful if I would have had to come back to deal with that myself. Yeah. And so it's not always needing those documents for somebody to have the authority. It's not necessarily, you don't have to be incapacitated. It can be effective the day that you sign it. We can sign it at noon. You can go use it at 12:01. That's what gives you the authority with that third party. And you can just be unavailable. So I've had, I do hospital appointments. And so usually it's for single people or a spouse who needs authority. And I'm running up to the hospital or the rehab or because they do have capacity. They just can't physically leave
Right.
to go take care of their stuff. And somebody has to go do that and have authority to do that. So it's just unavailable.
Right.
They're just unavailable. So to answer your question, I think everybody over the age of 18 should have estate planning. Personally, my youngest clients, when they came to me, so I had the range of 25 years old with kids to 100. That's a 75-year span of people needing estate planning
Yeah.
to keep them private, sometimes just because they're unavailable. I've been out of the country 2 times when I've had my kids wreck cars. Thankfully, they were fine. But somebody has to go do all those things, make sure they go get checked out, from the doctor, but then, taking it to Hammers and getting a quote and calling your insurance company and what do we do? And we need somebody out here to assess the damage, and you have no authority to do that for somebody else. I couldn't go do it for you. You can't do it for your spouse or your kid either. Anybody over the age of 18 should have, anywhere from kids backpacking around Europe that leave their car in their bank account here with the parents, to any age. They just need to have it signed and done before they are determined incapacitated. So that's the range that I work with. Once they become incapacitated and now they need their estate planning done or things, maybe they have a power of attorney. That's where you're getting more into the elder care realm, which I do not do. My passion is being that creative and, how do we get creative on your stuff specific to you?
Yeah.
That's precise to their situation. And everybody is different. Nobody has the same situation. They don't own the same things. They don't have the same family dynamic. They're single, they're married, blended kids, stepkids, adopted kids that they want to be theirs, but they're not adopted or theirs biologically. I had one just recently where I had to do a minor trust amendment because it was just an oversight that, to them it's their grandson, but it's their child's stepchild. So they would have been cut out when the person really wanted them included, because for their whole lifetime, that was their grandkid. And they don't want them cut out. But if you don't do it correctly, they're going to be cut out.
That makes sense.
And then, you see it down the road with beneficiaries. People don't, they have expectations, or they've been told that, when I pass, you're going to get this.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't do it legally, that's not going to happen. And so now that expectation doesn't play out. And sometimes they've already spent the money. And I've seen siblings never talk to each other again for, $10,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it just ends up just not good situations. And when you see family members who, and I'm sure if they're not talking, they might have had some problems growing up anyway. But that really is just really sad, because I just can't imagine that person would have thought or wanted their kids to never talk to each other again.
Yeah.
Those are bad situations.
Yeah. So I guess there are some people that pick a bank to be an executor or have that play out because they may not want to put that burden on a family member. Do you find that sometimes that does work better, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those clients, they are usually wealthy. They are educated. I have worked with other lawyers. I have worked with retired financial advisors, very professional people, very wealthy. And they know their kids get along. They know their kids live in different states across the country. And they don't want to burden their kids. They just want their kids to receive their inheritance. And so we do a whole estate plan with, because then it also wraps up, again, people think at death. Where do I want my stuff to go when I die?
Right.
Well, you got to tie that into your money's for you during your lifetime. We got to make sure you're taken care of first.
Sure.
And so then we end up naming a central bank, I've done it several times, many times with them, is we'll also name them as on their financial power of attorney. They will be their agent.
Yeah.
So that way, if something happens during their lifetime, we have this, the flow, it's the same person who's going to be administering it at death, if that's what it plays out. And it's usually because they just don't want to burden their kids.
Yeah.
They don't want to end up their kids fighting. They don't want them to have certain expectations and them, having to worry about, well, the bank is here, but they're in, Oregon or somewhere.
Yeah.
So yes, that can be very, very helpful. Clients will usually give me the authority to give the bank those documents. So then they do whatever they do so they have access to it, because that's one of the worst things, like I said, with the safe deposit box. I know I'm on there. They told me I'm on the documents, but I don't have a copy. So they usually give me the authority, and that way it goes smoothly because they already have the documents. And then it's just a matter of, if they update those documents, they've got to make sure that the trust company knows that there's been an update or an amendment, so they're administering the correct thing.
That makes
Sorry
sense.
about that. I cut you off to finish
No,
that.
I mean, I didn't know if just rough estimates of what the fees are for a bank to do.
So Central Bank just informed me that they're raising their limit. This year they raised it to $750,000. Some of the banks were usually at $500,000, so they wouldn't take it to administer unless it was over that amount, because they need to make money too to pay their employees.
Sure.
And usually their fees, I would say roughly what I've seen is roughly 1%.
Okay.
If it is but think of it this way, it's probably going to be cheaper if they're going to administer the trust, liquidate it, or do what they do, and then it's going to the beneficiaries outright. It's those special needs trusts or things that are continuing, because there are expenses involved. They're going to have to file a tax return. They're going to have to meet with that beneficiary, assess what their needs are, for the upcoming quarter or year, and then take the time to do all those things. So, but roughly, so the special needs ones are going to be, I think the last one I saw was like 1.2%. And it's whatever assets they're holding.
Got it.
To administer.
Yeah.
But then to kind of go off of that, who does it then when you're under 500,000 or now under 750,000? It's going to be a private lawyer who's probably going to be helping
I see.
To administer that, because it can still be a family member administering it. Me personally, I don't, even when clients ask, and I've had it happen on occasion, clients will ask when they feel that they don't trust anybody or don't have anybody or don't want their kids to fight, and they don't want to name one kid or both kids or one kid to cut the other out and have these horrible situations.
Yeah.
I have had them ask, well, will you be my financial agent, or will you be my personal representative? And I typically don't do that.
Yeah.
I would prefer, that's me personally. Now, there's probably other lawyers who might be different, but for me, I would much rather have even the children named, and then I will represent the kids on how to do it.
Right.
And so usually what I see when I have that conversation, if that comes up, is they usually will pick the one child who they, this one's a nurse, or this one's a financial advisor, or this one is, a CPA, or they're in some type of responsible profession where they know that that's just the one they trust. That's who they trust to do it.
Yeah.
And then we give the authorities and those documents for that child to come back and be able to hire me to administer it if needed.
Is there any warnings for people who are maybe shopping, attorneys and that sort of thing? What things they might want to look out for, or maybe ask?
I would say the thing I see most recently now is people think there's one kind of trust. A trust is a trust, it's a trust, it's a trust, it's the same trust. and it's not. There are lots of different kinds of trusts. There's revocable trusts, which are pretty common. Now there's irrevocable trusts that are very, much more common now to try to preserve assets. There's, Veterans Asset Protection Trust. There's Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. There's Special Needs Trusts. There's all kinds of different trusts that need to be written a certain way in order and be funded correctly for it to play out the way they want it to play out, which is not just to avoid probate, but it's preserving assets. It might be preserving it for a spouse, for a special needs child who lives in their home. But it's just having everything in there. So I think right now it would be a trust is not a trust is not a trust. There's lots of different ones. And having a lawyer walk through that with you on why would I need this one and not that one? Or why are you trying to, put me into this one? But again, people don't know. I mean, sometimes they don't know what questions to ask. Mm-hmm. They've just heard from their financial advisor or their friend or their neighbor or someone at church that, hey, you need a trust. And I highly recommend to go in to see an estate planning attorney who does estate planning. So they can answer all those questions and determine. Sometimes I've had clients come in saying, I need a trust. My financial advisor said I need a trust. Or whoever said they need a trust, and we get into the appointment, and by the end of the appointment, it's, why do you need a trust again? And it just depends on their situation, and who are they trying to give the money to? How are they trying to preserve it during their lifetime? Right. Because skilled care and nursing home care is very expensive, and so sometimes we just need to have that conversation of. You're not going to qualify for any way to pay it. So good thing you have a financial advisor, because now we need to have that conversation of how you can preserve your assets to self-pay, because that's probably the situation they're in. They're too old to buy long-term care insurance, but their financial advisor is going to know some hybrid policies, whatever their products are. Sometimes they just need like a gap coverage that, you might, let's say nursing care is $10,000 a month, but you have enough to self-pay $8,000 a month, but how are we going to pay that $2,000 a month? So there's professionals that, once we identify those things, there's professionals out there who can help, which can be immensely helpful. Otherwise, I've seen people come in that have paid it down. There was $750,000, and they thought that they were supposed to spend it down to $5,000. They didn't go see a lawyer. They didn't go get legal advice. And some of that could have been preserved.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I wish you would have come in here earlier. And they didn't know. They just didn't know. I see all kinds of situations.
So, Lisa, how did you get in this line of work?
So specifically into like lawyer or estate
attorney
planning?
And then into estate planning.
I started working for a law firm when I was 18, and it was because my mom worked at that estate planning law firm. Actually, I think it was brothers. And so one did criminal law, one did estate planning. I think she worked for the criminal brother first, and then when he went on and did something else, she worked for the estate planner. And so it was, at the time, it was dad and two sons, I think is what it was. Different state, wasn't in Missouri. But they had, back then we killed a lot of trees, and there was lots of paper, lots of boxes of paper. And you're under a guideline that you have to preserve that as a lawyer for a certain amount of time, according to our ethics. And so they had garages of boxes and files, and they were like, lifted it up. We need you to clean this up. And so it was a long time. I had to go through files. I had to purge things. Back then we called it a tickler system on when you could destroy the file ethically. So it was setting up all of those systems and organizations. So because sometimes you do need to go into those files. And so that way their staff or paralegal would be able to know where to easily access that in the storage unit. So then I took a break. I, got married, had kids, went and traveled and did the things. And when I was deciding on what I wanted to do for my education, I ended up going, now I was in Missouri. And so I ended up going to Drury for a 2-year paralegal studies degree. So I thought, oh, I love the law. I love, hear my mom talk about it. And I loved working at the firm when I did. And so let's just go do that. And so I got that degree. And part of being, you couldn't get that degree until you did a practicum. So for 1 semester, you had to go work for free at a law firm for like 100 hours or something. And I ended up working at an amazing law firm for 5 years. Ended up getting my bachelor's while I was working there. And then I thought, I can go a step further. I think I could go to law school. So they were very helpful. They knew I wanted to go to law school, and they were just very supportive. I could not thank them enough. But I was married at the time. I had 2 kids. They were in 4th and 6th grade, and we're divorced now. But we ended up where I thought, hey, let's just sell everything we own, and except this one thing that makes us money. Let's sell everything we own, and let's just go to law school. So we ended up going to law school together in St. Paul, Minnesota. Kids were in 4th and 6th grade at the time. Graduated, came back here to Springfield. No one wants to stay in the cold. And I was born in North Dakota. I know North Dakota and Minnesota, and it is just too cold. Matter of fact, at graduation, I had some friends come down while we were waiting for our bar passage results. And it was... they were coming down in a group, and their goal was to come south until it was warm enough that they could golf. and so that was kind of funny. But getting back to that, when I graduated, I had a couple places where I wanted to work selected in my head, and I got interviews at some, but it just didn't work out. I think I'd picked 3 or 4 places. And thought, well, if that doesn't work, then I'm just going to open my own firm. And so I did. So in 2008, I opened up my own law firm and started doing family law. And so it was, back then it was a lot of divorces, custody, maintenance, child support. And then it kind of evolved into more paternity cases. People, society has kind of evolved, and not many people were getting married, but they were having kids. And so you got to have custody cases. You still got to have child support and all those things. And so I had already been practicing as a litigator in family court, in probate court, and in juvenile court for things. Then kind of evolved into grandparent rights. I was getting a lot of grandparent. Society had changed a little bit again, and parents were moving home and getting divorces and moving in with mom and dad. And then they decided they, got a new boyfriend, and now they're ripping the kids out of the grandparents' home. And, kids have to change schools. And so then I kind of evolved into the custody of grandparent rights. And kind of during that time, fun fact, I'll kind of back up. So I had went to law school at William Mitchell in St. Paul, wrote on to law review my 2nd year. Fast forward to graduation, my grandma couldn't make it because she was right on the verge of having strokes and not feeling well, and she just couldn't travel the 5 hours or whatever it was. So my mom was there, and she sees my grandma's brother. And she's like, "What are you doing here?" He said, "My grandson's graduating, and he was on law review." So I had a cousin who we went to the same school.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, wow. So it was like all these things are kind of fun. I was like, "Well, we were on law review together, and we didn't even know," because I didn't know he was my cousin. But during that time, my grandma ended up, going from, independent living to assisted and, all the way up to memory care.
Yeah.
And she was in the nursing home for, it was over a decade, self-paying, the whole time because of the state that she lived in. They had different kind of rules, and she had assets to pay. So I would, I just love my grandma. Love my grandma. She, fun fact, she is a niece of Lawrence Welk. So I'm like great
Lawrence Welk
great
show.
niece. Yeah. Yes. So she was very, very, very proud niece of Lawrence Welk. And so I would travel back to North Dakota to see her. I would try to get there at least 2 or 3 times a year to go and see her. And then during the course of my life situation, I was traveling for about 2 years. And so kind of at the end, when she ended up going from, very skilled into memory care, I was able to go stay there with her. And so sometimes I would get a hotel, sometimes I would stay at her properties. But I kind of saw that whole gamut from her first stroke over a decade to when she finally passed, in nursing care. But by the time I got into estate planning, she was probably needed more skilled care, assisted. But so just seeing that side and, seeing the aging process and just the value of life and the things that, you want to do and you want to go do. And so it's just very personal to me to be able to help clients. And so I'm the transition from my whole life experience, because I went to school later in life, which is totally okay to do. But just seeing that whole range of my experience. And I think the transition from family law into what I do now, the estate planning and probate, I think it was a very good transition for me based on my life experience, based on my work experience and education. I just thought it was, so I love what I do. I love what I do. Love helping clients. And I love hearing clients, it's just nice to hear a thank you, get a hug, and know that, they're just very appreciative because, again, they don't know what they don't know. Right. And they thought it was going to play out a certain way, and it just didn't. And then they learn. And it's just patiently walking through that process with them.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a wide life experience.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And my life isn't over yet.
You got still a lot to do. Yeah.
Still a lot to do.
Is there anything we haven't asked that you would like to talk about?
Everybody owns different things. Everybody has done different stuff with their assets, with their kids, just everything is different. And so I guess as a takeaway, one person's estate planning is not going to be the same as their neighbor's. And so if the neighbor is saying, or if somebody they know is saying, I did this, you need to go do this, what that should translate to is you just need to go see your own estate planning lawyer to confidentially go over your situation and assets to come up with a plan that is best for that person. Because I've had neighbors come in and, they're confused on why I'm telling them, well, you could have a trust. I mean, I can charge you for that, but you don't really need it. Here's some other options. Yeah. And then I'll let them go home and think about it. I'll write down some notes, for them to think about. Maybe they want to go research it at home, use the Google or Chat GPT, and they might come back with some questions. Or usually they will come back and say, I see why you said I could do this, and here's the route I'm picking. Yeah. And then we just go do that.
That's wonderful. I like to ask, because we've done shows on this and we kind of consistently start asking it lately. Do you have a bucket list? Mm-hmm. Can you share some of it?
My one bucket list, and I was so close last time, but I'm on my 3rd passport, and my bucket list is to fill up that passport.
That's cool.
I was so close last time, but my first one on this new passport was going to see my grandbaby. My daughter's living in Japan. Her husband is
what part?
They are about an hour south of Tokyo.
Okay.
And so I was able to go there in December for a month to go see the second grandbaby born. I had to help take care of the first one. We didn't get out a whole lot But we were able to go. I mean, she was very pregnant, so we
Yeah.
were able to go out and do some things because that baby decided I needed to be there 3 weeks
Yeah.
before he decided to show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I only got a week with him. But
So filling up the passport.
filling up the passport.
So where's some other places
Yep.
that you really want to go?
That I haven't been to yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go to Europe. I have not been to Europe yet.
Okay.
My birthday is on St. Patrick's Day.
Awesome.
Yes, I am Irish. And yes, I would like to go spend my birthday in Ireland
Okay.
1 year. So that is definitely on the bucket list. I
That's
would like
cool.
to go on a Mediterranean cruise. I
Okay.
think that would be fun. An Alaska cruise.
Yeah.
Not a fan of going to cold places on traveling. Usually don't like to spend my money on cold places, but
Yeah.
no one that I have talked to has said that they disliked their Alaskan cruise.
Yeah.
So that would be another one. But places that I've been to that I would like to revisit, a couple places in the Caribbean. It's always nice to go to Cancun or Tulum or, somewhere down there. Aruba, would like to get there. Haven't been there yet.
Yeah.
But some of my other favorite places, I love Australia. Australia is great. Gold Coast, great. And then Bali.
Oh man.
I like Bali too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I realized that my thing is I like to go places now for a month. So 7 years ago, I went to Bali for a month. I went to Australia for 2 months.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And
That's really
And then I
neat.
was just in Japan for a month. So I've noticed now as I'm getting older, the duration I'm staying, I like to be a little bit longer
Yeah.
instead of, bouncing
That's
around every
cool.
2 days.
Yeah. Well, really let you get immersed.
Yes, yes, and if you will get immersed with the locals, they would love to share. When I was in Australia, I had met several people, and out of everybody that I met, they had never met an American. I'm like, how is that even possible?
You seem like we're all over the place.
So then it was kind of funny, they're trying to do the American accent, and I'm trying to do the Australian accent. And I was there long enough; I was just picking up the accent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're Australian now, Lisa. Yes, I am.
That's cool.
So it is fun. I've been to places in the Caribbean where it was some of my favorite things to do because I love the locals because that's where you're going to see the things.
Yeah.
And so, getting off the cruise ship or, they're always out there trying to sell you something or take you to a cab somewhere. And
Yeah.
so what I like to do is, can I just pay you for the day and take me around to all your favorite places?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, take me to your favorite restaurant and we'll have a meal together.
Oh, that's cool.
And so what I'm proud about that, though, is my daughter has now done the same thing. And so
Yeah.
her situation was the driver took her and her husband to his house and they had a family meal that his wife cooked and sat down at the kitchen
Wow.
table to
That's
have that.
crazy.
And
That's
so
great.
so I love to travel.
Oh man.
I love meeting people.
Well, if you
and-
love the Caribbean, I recommend Turks and Caicos. We
Haven't
were
been
just
there yet either, so yes.
highly recommend it. It's a good one.
I will put that on
Yeah,
my bucket
check
list.
that one out.
I'll try to have that on my new passport.
Yeah, I'm Sydney's on my bucket list.
Yes.
I want someday. I'll get my kids want to go there too, and just getting us all there is just too much right now. But
Yes.
someday.
Yes. But if you travel savvy and can, find the plane tickets, and of course it's more expensive when you're buying for multiple people. I just got to pay for myself. So it's not as bad.
Yeah.
My ticket, I think, people would think it's shocking, oh, going to Japan, it's got to be super expensive. I think my round trip ticket was $1,200.
Wow.
And thankful I had a place to stay, so I didn't have to pay for a hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't have that added expense. But if you have friends,
That
family,
helps a
you
lot.
just need to buy the plane
Absolutely.
ticket and just
Yep.
go.
Love it.
Just go.
Yeah. Get out there for
Yep.
sure. Cool. Well, thank
Yep.
you again so much.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're
This-
helping educate
this-
people on this because we see it a lot. We unfortunately in our line of work, because we do home health, hospice, and home care, we run into a lot of situations, and unfortunately, sometimes, just a little bit of money early could have saved a lot of money later, and unfortunately, you can make that analogy for a lot of different things, like people talk about investing in their health, and we're kind of going down that road in this podcast right now. Is that in 2026, we're going to have a lot of podcasts about wellness and taking better care of yourself and ways to do that. And some of that does require investing money and time and energy, obviously. And, but in 99% of the cases, that money is well spent, you avoid money issues later. So investing in your health is something that will save you tons of money later.
Yes.
And the same thing, I think, in this realm, doing estate planning can save, not just, can save your family a lot of headache.
Yes.
And so if you really do want to do the right thing for your family, I think estate planning is top of the list.
Yeah, I agree, because unfortunately we're all going to die.
Yep.
That is just, we can't get around it. It's going to be a given. We just don't have a crystal ball to know when.
Yeah.
And same with incapacity, to avoid probate during lifetime. That's an area that I educate people on, because they just don't think of that. They would never think that a spouse has to go into probate to make decisions or anything for, their spouse.
Yeah.
They think that the law just automatically allows that, and it does not.
Yeah.
So yes, very much so. Money spent, and same with the health and wellness. A lot of people are now focusing on that, and that's just a better quality of life. So yes, I'm happy to see that people are investing into themselves.
Yeah.
To take care of themselves, because if you take care of yourself, you're going to be able to take care of other people.
Absolutely. So true. So true.
Yep.
Well, thank you again. Thanks for the good work you do. And I'm glad you started your own shop and are local here in the Springfield area. And anybody out there who needs estate planning, we highly recommend you to give you a call. And as a reminder to everyone, please like and subscribe to this podcast. And if you know anybody who is struggling right now, trying to take care of their aging parents or anything like that, please send this video to them. Things like the things we're going to be covering in 2026 and the past podcasts that we have we're not selling anything. We're just trying to get the information out there so people have the information they need to take care of themselves and to take care of their loved ones better, because we want to make sure that people are aging better, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do. I hear very good things
Thank you.
About you, and that, you stay on afterwards. You don't just, when you're just there, during the time it's needed, and then after care. So thank you too for what you do.
Yeah.
It's noticed. I do hear things back.
Yeah.
From that, and it's very nice to hear, because again, it's working with people who are going to take care of people. So thank you too.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And we'd love to stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at In Good Company Elder Care Podcast.
You can also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IGC Pod, and on TikTok at IGC Elder Care Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to In Good Company Elder Care in Your Backyard. I'm John Ray, and I've been joined by my amazing co-host, Spencer Ernst. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alex Wallace, for helping bring this show to life. Until next time, take care, and remember, you are always in good company.